Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We have a special edition today. We got a lot to cover, and we're going to do something a little bit special because we're going to kind of do a simulcast. We're going to do multiple locations that we're going to broadcast this. So I got to kind of do a little bit of extra work here today, just a little bit, just to kind of start it off. But we're going to do the Mental Conditioning Gym podcast. So we're doing that first and foremost. I'm Elliot Allen, the host of the Mental Conditioning Gym podcast, but we're going to double that up and also put that, run that I think on also on Second Thought, a sports show. That's kind of a piece of that. We're going to kind of do a little bit with that. And we're also just going to just put it on social media. We have a lot to cover. We want to do a wrap up of a very, very special weekend in which we visited the Boxing Hall of Fame. And you know what? It was so many different pieces and so many different elements to it that I said, you know what? I would like to do a podcast about this, and this would be perfectly befitting. I haven't done a mental conditioning gym podcast in a while where it was just me and you hanging out and kind of talking a little bit. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to do that this week. And on the podcast, it's not going to be no guests. It's just me and you guys in the gym getting the work in and talking a little bit about mindset and conditioning. And I think that there's no better place to really kind of set this off than to set it off at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, which I just came back from. It was a very, very, very special weekend. So let's get it going. Let's get it started. Again, my name is Elliot Allen. I am the host of the Mental Conditioning Gym podcast. Here we go again. Let's talk about that, give it a wrap up and kind of tie in all those pieces. I mean, the whole mental conditioning movement itself is really, we base it off of boxing, and we base it off of mindset, obviously, and using those boxing analogies. If you take a look in the background, if you can see it, it's my latest book, 12 Rounds of Mental Conditioning, Us Against Life, The Big Fights. We really draw a lot of boxing analogies in there, but as much as it is the book involves boxing, it's really a book about mindset. And this was a great platform for me to really go and get extra inspired, even more motivated. I came back really just so motivated about the whole movement. I really got reinforcement about the movement. That's why I say, I got to come on here and do Mental Conditioning Gym podcast today from our location and really just kind of take my time and step back, because I'm still unpacking what I just saw this weekend because it was so powerful. So I'm getting a chance to do it with you guys, the audience, as you guys can share the experience with me. But boxing and mindset is such a parallel, and to be around that environment of the best, it really created so much homework for me mentally, so much validation for me mentally in terms of the mental conditioning movement and in terms of boxing. So first things first, it was my first time being up there. So it was just a new experience for me. That in itself, as we slow it down and really get into just the experience itself, is a mindset thing. Being able to expand our minds to see something different. The last time I came over here and I talked to you guys about, the start of this season of the Mental Conditioning Gym podcast, we really talked about me going into a new season for myself, and that is the retirement season. And I found that so much of my conversation now does involve that, because that is part of my life now, and this is the next chapter of my life. We sat down and we talked about that transition for me at that moment and what's that going to look like. And here we are in the midst of that. And part of it, the biggest part of it, is change, transition, doing something new, doing something different. But what I found is that, and then, I have a lot of peers that also retired around this time with me. And I'm hearing a lot of the chat, and I'm hearing a lot of the talk of the different challenges. And I'm not in the room in terms of those challenges, in terms of saying, what's different? And we sometimes think that it's going to be automatic, that change is just going to be, as soon as you retire, it's just, no, but you have to actually train. You have to actually get your mind deprogrammed from that lifestyle that you had to leave, for some of us for 20 years, some 25, 30, whatever it is, amount of time that you was on that job. You have to deprogram yourself, and you have to make that conscious effort. It takes effort. You just can't wake up and it's going to be automatic. So I have great partners in life, and my partners are my actual family. And my wife is, my partner, and she's one that is helping me with the transition, and she knows, what I like to do. She knows that boxing is my passion. She's very involved with the mental condition and movement itself. So she actually organized as usual. She's always, finding these things. And, obviously I've known about the Boxing Hall of Fame for many years. I've seen it on YouTube. I've watched it on YouTube many, many times, but I just haven't had a chance, obviously, to go up there. So she organized the trip. And it's something different. It's something new that, again, you have to force yourself into that mode to actually execute it and do that. I want to really hone in on that point, not just for people who are retired, but for those of us that are transitioning in our lives. It ain't something that's just automatic. For our youngsters, when you transition and going from junior high school to high school, there's different execution that you have to have. Going into high school, into college, there's different transition that you have to have that just takes effort to do that. I'm here in the gym, I'm writing that workshop right now. It takes effort to do that. I wish it was so easy that, I'm in college now, so I'm going to just, no. There's a certain type of effort that goes involved with, well, what do I have to do now? And you have to execute that. That's mental transition. Retiring from a job, whether, again, you worked on that job for 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, or even just going to a new job, there is transition involved in that. And in this particular case, believe it or not, this is where I say mindset is so important, and we don't really understand the true pieces that go into our mindset. Something as simple as, it may seem like it was just pleasure, and it was obviously something that is very pleasurable to me, to go to the Boxing Hall of Fame and have opportunity to get into the things that we get into. And we're going to get into that on the podcast. I'm going to share that whole experience with you guys. Obviously, that was a great experience, but that's actually, believe it or not, mindset. Executing to say, guess what? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the Boxing Hall of Fame. Whatever it is that you enjoy doing, that for however many years that you couldn't do because you were working, there's no more excuse. The one excuse is that you just don't do it, and that's not an acceptable excuse. You must take the time to say, I'm going to plan this trip. I'm going to plan the vehicle that I need to go down there in. All of these things you have to actually do. Well, am I going to stay down there? I'm going to get into that too. That's all of those things go into this process. Are we going to stay overnight? How does this work? But this all is involved with the execution, and that's not physical. That's mental. That you have to deprogram yourself for saying, or that making that normal excuse. Oh, I can't go. I gotta go to work. I gotta work. I can't go. That excuse is not on the table anymore. Now you can actually go to the Boxing Hall of Fame, which is what I did, and it was a fantastic weekend. Fantastic. It far superseded exactly what I want to do. But again, what I wanted to see. But it's a first-time experience that, believe it or not, again, that's something that mentally I have to prepare for that. I have to make the extra effort to do that. So let me just get this piece out of the way first, and just want to say congratulations to all of the inductees into the Hall of Fame. I want to read them all off so I don't get any disrespect to all of the people. It was such a great weekend, a great evening. The 2025 inductees included the great Kenny Bayless, Al Gavin, Harry Gibbs, Randy Gordon, Ross Greenberg, Rodrigo Valdez, the Kat Davis, the female boxer, Owen Swift. These were all of the non-boxing people. And we're going to talk about that again, about these are people that are not actual boxers, but they call them participants in the sport. But their accomplishments of their participation in the sport, believe it or not, in some cases is just as important to the actual fighters. And I'm going to talk about that too. Those participants, non-participants, to me is so profound to the sport, and frankly is very, very profound to me and my mindset. So he was actually probably one of my favorite people to actually see there, which I had quite a few. And then the actual boxers that were there was the great Manny Pacquiao. I mean, you can certainly make a case say that Manny Pacquiao is one of the great fighters of all time. So it was certainly an honor to be able to be present in the building when the great Manny Pacquiao was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Michael Nunn, who happens to be one of my favorite fighters of all time. So for me, that was a great treat to be able to witness him going into the Hall of Fame. He truly is, one of my favorite fighters that I love to watch all time. You had Vinny Pazienza also was in there. I witnessed his career. just a rugged fighter, man, that came to get it. As he said on that stage, he just came to get it. Every time you saw him, you knew you were going to get an excellent fight. As he said himself, quote unquote, he worked his ass off to give us his best, and he certainly did. He certainly deserved to be there. Had a few of the great female fighters. Jessica Chavez was there, and Sophie Mathis was there. Mary Jo Sanders was there. So we want to say congratulations to all 6 of those actual boxers that made it into the Hall of Fame. It was just a great honor and a privilege to be able to see them, to be able to hear them talk. It was just a great experience. So I want to talk a little bit about that experience, and I want to talk about, again, mindset and learning. I've done many messages about learning on the job, and when I say learn on the job, that's the job of life. Part of mindset training is to be able to have our mindset open to be able to learn new things and learn new experiences. And part of learning new things and learning experiences is getting it right and sometimes not getting it right. But when you go up there, when you put yourself into the execution phase, you give yourself an opportunity to say, you know what, I needed to do that a little bit better. The next time I'm going to do that a little bit better. And I take that approach to everything that I do. Particularly at this stage in my life. Again, this is new stuff. I'm very excited to be able to start this chapter of my life of retirement, but I've never retired before. I've never been in this stage before. So I'm learning each and every step, each and every day that I get up, each and every day that I come to the gym. It's a learning experience, but I'm mentally ready and prepared to do that. That's something that, frankly, I'm very excited about. So my mindset in going up to the Boxing Hall of Fame is a little bit different for me now at this stage in my life than it's ever been, because it's a combination of entertainment, which, boxing is my favorite sport right there with basketball, but it's also an element of work for me because, we do have mental conditioning in sports, and so that's part of my work. I enjoy my work immensely, so this is a new experience for me working. To be able to, when I get up in the morning, I'm excited to come to this gym. I was excited to go up to the Boxing Hall of Fame, but guess what? That's actually part of my work. So that's something that I have to learn. I've never really been in a position to where when I got up in the morning every day to go to work that I was excited, like, I can't wait to go to work. I'm looking forward to this. So that's new to me too. How do you do that? But at the same time, it is work. And there are some elements about it that you're kind of like, I got a little bit of anxiety about doing this. A little bit of anxiety about the execution of this. So again, approaching that event this weekend was a little bit like, oh man, how do I do this? Now, let me back up and just say, shout out again to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Just an unbelievable weekend. It's a 4-day event that they do it. They started on Thursday. They have things going on Thursday. They have things going on Friday. They have things going on Saturday. And then Sunday is a culmination of the actual Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which was tremendous. So we were trying to figure out which day are we going to go up there, and the kids still had school. So, we knew that more than likely Thursday or Friday was going to pretty much be out. But what day were we going to go up there? How were we going to do that? So I said, you know what, let's just go, and then when we go, we're going to learn on the fly what we should and should be doing. So we kind of decided, at one point we was even saying, you know what, we'll just go on Sunday and come right back. Got a lot of things coming up this summer, so we're trying to conserve our money, make sure that we're doing our planning right and things of that nature. So at one point we was considering, we're not going to even stay. We'll just go on Sunday, go to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony and come back home. But I said, you know what, let me back it up and let me do it right now. Let me get this right to the best way I can to learn what's the experience. It's something that, again, this is going to be my job, which is, I smile just saying that's my job, to go back up there each and every year. But how do I maximize that experience? How do I get the mental conditioning in sports out there? We're doing a great job with our podcast with the boys. How do we continue this? We tried to actually, let me just be transparent and share this again. And I'm sharing these things because it's a mindset thing about learning how to go to new levels and learn different things. We're working on, how do we get ourselves in position to get press passes? When you go to these events as sports reporting, which we're doing, we have mental conditioning in sports. We have a website where we're writing our active articles. We're getting better with that. Execution of new things. That's a mindset. This is new. I've never done anything like that. I'm talking to the boys and getting them. You guys got to write these articles. It's new for them too. So we're all trying to get into the rhythm of it. So we did call My wife, who's brilliant at that stuff and pushing it, she called to try to get our press passes. We got denied. That's a loss. It's all good though because it's a learning experience. But they call us back. They actually called us back and they actually explained to us what we would need. Okay, listen, this is what you're gonna need. You need to have an editor, which I'm like, what's the? But I thought, oh, wait a minute. I am the editor. We are the editor of our website. So we do have that. But I'm sure what's going to happen is that they're going to come back, they're going to look at the website, make sure that it's not something that we just made up yesterday and wrote one article. So that's something that we have to learn to be able to grow it. Ultimately, what they told us was basically, they didn't have any more press passes, which I'm not sure how true that piece was. It was just more that, we applied for it late, so maybe we have to make sure we get it in on time. But I understand we definitely need to be more reputable, but that's part of the experience. If we didn't execute, if she didn't make that call, we don't have any extra knowledge. So that was one of the first learning pieces we got before we even went down there. So we said, okay, no problem. Next year we'll try to be more prepared to take that experience and go down there with a press pass. It'll make the experience a little bit more different. But I have to put on a different hat now. I'm the press. Can you believe that? I have an opportunity to be the press. I'm not just down there as Elliot Allen, the boxing fan, but I'm working. Mental conditioning movement is working. And the mental conditioning movement itself is based off of boxing and boxing analogies and the mindset. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean as I get into this discussion today. So we decided at the end of the day, you know what, let's do this. Let's go down on Saturday. We'll leave Saturday morning and hit the Saturday event. They had events there all day Saturday, and we're not really even sure, what do these events look like? We've never been, so all this experience is new, but execution. We talk about that so much in the mental conditioning movement about execution. You have to execute in order to be able to know how to move forward, in order to be able to adjust your mindset. Sometimes the adjustment is, I don't like that. That's not something I want to do. But how do you know if you don't execute, if you don't try? So we cannot be afraid to fail. Again, that's a boxing analogy. The best fighters in the world, honestly, are the ones that are not afraid to. I'm not afraid to lose. When I go in there, I know I got a tough opponent in front of me, but I don't really care. I think that I can beat him. I believe that in my mind, and that execution is what makes you dare to be great. The great Larry Merchant used to always say that. Who dares to be great? Those are the things that for me, and watching boxing all these years, I'm going to talk about this in a few more minutes, that resonate in my ear. Larry Merchant saying, who dares to be great? In order to dare to be great, that means that you have to actually get in the ring against a tough opponent. You have to actually take on a challenge that you don't necessarily believe that, I'm not sure. This is a tough challenge, but I dare to be great because I know I have to take this challenge to get to that next level. So we decided, okay, you know what, let's go down on Saturday and see what's going on. Again, we didn't really understand what the events was about and what they were going to be doing. My wife said, well, they're going to have like panels, but we're not sure who's going to be on the panels. How does that work? So we take the nice little drive. It was a 4-hour drive. Me and the boys and my wife went down there. We get down there, and I tell you what, as soon as we get down there, the energy was just great. It was just on fire. I was just blown away. Just seeing the International Boxing Hall of Fame was just like, man. And let me just say again, and being transparent, but I knew this about the Boxing Hall of Fame. When we've been, and if you go back, you can see the documentation on that we've done. And we're probably going to go back up there again this year. I'm hoping to really, really dig into it like we're going to dig into the Boxing Hall of Fame. We've been to the Basketball Hall of Fame numerous times. Me and the boys and my wife have been up there numerous times. And it's a total different contrast in terms of the facilities and how to play. So the Basketball Hall of Fame is this huge facility. They actually just built a new one probably in the last 10 years. It's an unbelievable facility, huge, so many different interactive things to do. You know, when you think about the NBA and American basketball, how they do things so big, the Hall of Fame represents that, is very representative of that. Now, Boxing Hall of Fame is not that. It's such a low-key place. I'm not going to say nondescript because it does say International Boxing Hall of Fame, but it's a very small building, so to speak. Almost it's just like a huge, like a house. It's really not big at all. It's right off the highway. They have built like a outside canopy, which they used to do the actual Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. I think the last 2 years they've stopped that. They've now put it into a local casino, which was a great experience. I'll tell you about that also as we talk about this. But it's a really small place. When you go in there, the Hall of Famers that are up on the walls, again, when you go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, they have these, there's just like a huge, when you look up, it's just like this, you just see all the Hall of Fame players that have these big pictures and their names and all of this, a whole thing. But when you go into the Hall of Fame, the size of it is probably about the size of this book right here. Their plaques, maybe even smaller than this, to tell you the truth. Their plaques is just a little small plaques, and they have them like, spread out all along the wall of the rooms. Very amazing that, it's just nondescript place. It's not really, really big at all. But the power behind it is huge. That's big. It's not big, but the power and the messaging is huge. So that was interesting to see that. Like, wow, this is a little bit different. Look at these little small plaques. And I kind of knew that, though, just from doing my homework on YouTube beforehand. But we got there. We went inside there, looked at that. Again, it was nothing big at all. You can run through the actual Hall of Fame in about, I don't know, just to walk through it. You literally can walk through it in about 15 minutes or less. But, for me, just to see all of the artifacts and all of the paraphernalia was amazing to me. So I probably can be there all day just looking at that. But just to walk through it is literally from one end of the hallway to the next. It's a small place. But then we go outside, and then we start to look at the activities that they had. And then they had on the stage, it's an outdoor stage and a canopy over it, and they had guest speakers. And the guest speakers that they had were just legendary people in the sport of boxing. And when we came up, it was just one of my favorite announcers in the sport of boxing all the time. And that's a gentleman by the name of Al Bernstein. I've been watching boxing for, upwards of 40 to 45 years. And Al Bernstein has always kind of been around. He was big on Showtime Boxing. He was a huge commentator on there for many, many, many years, and he's just done so many different fights. And he was answering questions on that stage. And here's where I'm going to slow it down again and talk about how mindset comes into play, transitional mindset comes into play, execution comes into play. So he's talking about boxing. And one of the things that's special about being in an environment, I said that a few minutes ago, that you are immersed around people that the language is different. Because that book, 12 Rounds of Mental Conditioning, Us Against Life, everybody is speaking that book. That's why for me, it was like, whoa, this is some powerful stuff. And my wife kept looking at me with smiling like, man, you talk about this stuff all the time. And these people ain't read my book. But our language was all the same. A lot of the language that's in that book is just being spoken amongst the people that were there. When I just can stop any person and start talking about boxing, the language is the same. The mindset is the same. The approach is the same to the sport of boxing. But it's bigger than that because it's all up here in the mind as well. As they started to speak on Sunday, the inductees, it was up here. And they start to really, really, really draw those comparisons to life and boxing. I'll come back to that. But Al Bernstein has always been a special announcer. And it's kind of funny, a lot of people would never know this, but a lot of my language comes from Al Bernstein and how I describe things, particularly if I'm watching boxing, but it also translates into my life. I was telling my wife, Al Bernstein has, a way of describing, when a guy gets hit really, really hard, you hear him all the time go, oh my! And I found myself, if you ever watch a fight with me, I say that a lot. That came from Al Bernstein. When a guy gets clipped hard, you're, oh my! That comes from Al Bernstein. He would say that. I remember him, Evander Holyfield and Riddick Beaufort, and he said that about 20 times that night just from the big shots. And so you gather those things. You gather that feeling and that emotion from listening to that. And when I went up there, my wife said to me, because again, when we do these things, my wife says to me, like, we up here, but we working. And I understand that very, very clearly. And I know how she is. And so the minute we got there, she was just like, you got to ask a question. And I was like, nah, in my mind, because I told her, I said, the main thing we're going to be doing over here is I want to observe this thing and I want to learn, and so we can get better. Next year we'll be prepared. That was kind of my way of mentally just saying like, I don't want that pressure. But we got there, and she, sure enough, you go to ask a question, because he was up there and he was speaking, but they were saying, if anybody want to ask a question, you can ask a question. So at first I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. But then I started thinking about it. I said, you know what? This is the moment. This is not physical now for me. It became a mindset thing. It became a mental challenge, because I just said, this is a transitional stage for me now. This is my job. I like my job. Let me fix that. I love my job. I'm here at I'm here at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I eat, drink, sleep, boxing. I love this. And I have an opportunity to get the microphone and ask a question to Al Bernstein. If you would have told me something like this 30 years ago, I would be like, you got to be out of your mind. And I have that chance to do that right now. And that's going to be for work purposes. That's what I do for a living. I got to get into this. So I said, you know what? Let me go up there. And I was able to ask him a question. It was very, very profound, because I asked him about, again, I'm reflecting in my mind about what did Al Bernstein do for me and my mindset. And Al Bernstein, along with the great, let me back it up and say that I missed Jim Lampley, who is my all-time favorite boxing announcer on HBO. And this is where you live and you learn, because we made a mistake. We didn't do our homework, but my wife, and which I believe this is what happened, for some reason we weren't able to really get the roster of who was going to be speaking. But Jim Lampley is one of the people that I really want to see. That's my guy. He's taught me, again, I don't know the man, but he's taught me so much about boxing, and the way that he describes it, his passion about it to this day. These guys are actually mentors of mine, and I've never met them. And I would love to have seen him speak. But he spoke, and then they went up to, Jim was on early. And I'm like, oh, man. But that's a lesson. You got to dig deeper to know what you got. What do you have? We should have known that. That's not an acceptable excuse that we didn't know. We're going up there to do our work. We should have known that. But okay, no problem. Al Bernstein is another guy I have a great respect for. And I asked him, I was like, let me ask you a question. I know that you guys do great background homework on the fighters before before fight night. How do you decipher which information you're going to give on the air? Because he told me, he said before I asked him a question, they do that for like 3 hours. And I know that they do pre-fight meetings, and they'll meet with these fighters for 3 or 4 hours. Obviously you can't give all of that backstory. But that's, to me and the boys, debate about this, and I have this debate about this with a lot of people who watch boxing casually, which is not a bad thing. I just know that the foundation of boxing is built off of those announcers and their ability to be able to really distribute not just the action that you see in front of your face. This is a mindset thing too. Foundation. But the thing about foundation is that a lot of times if you don't understand it, it's kind of boring, but it's actually exciting. It's actually something that you're building such enormous ability to be able to keep going and building on top of that. So they would slip little points in there about Al Gavin is one of the guys that went in. Al Gavin is a cut man. A lot of people don't know who he is, but I know who he is because Jim Lampley, Al Bernstein, these guys would mention him. Al Galvin is one of the best cut mans, and they would drop it, and they would drop it in there maybe for 5 minutes. But you knew that because now if a guy got cut, Al Galvin gonna do his work. And you see him close that cut up. Like, that dude got a bad cut, but he knew how to close the cut up. All of these guys, there's a lot of great, cut men over the years that I know their names, where they were from. And Al Bernstein talked about this. He was like, those things were very, very important. He was like, it's interesting that you actually, pick that out. He's like, we do that. But I didn't think anybody actually really understood that. He's like, it's interesting that you actually understood that. These were points. And what he told me, he was like, during the pre-fight, he said, I actually write down notes. I'll have like maybe 100 notes on my page that I'm writing down. And during the course of the fight, I try to slip it in when I can, which I thought is also genius to be able to do that. And then they have the skill to, when do you do that? But to me, that's all foundational building of why I'm so passionate about the sport today. That commentary made the sport interesting to me as he's putting in those little pieces. I was telling my wife too, we knew like every fighter, you knew where they were from. You knew that. If you start ripping names off the fighters for me, I'll tell you where they was from. You know, Roy Jones. Who the hell knows where Pensacola, Florida is? Nobody. Let's be honest. I love Roy. And if he's watching this, I don't mean no disrespect to Pensacola, but let's be honest. No one knows about no Pensacola, Florida. But Pensacola, Florida became one of my favorite states because my boy Roy Jones is from Pensacola. And he would get in the ring, Pensacola, baby, and they would talk about Pensacola. Just different, whoever the fighter was, you knew. You know, Vander Holyfield from Atlanta, Georgia. Everybody know Mike Tyson's from, you know, Brooklyn. All of these different fighters, you just kind of knew, you know, where they were from. And some of them were kind of like obscure, you know, people. Michael Nunn, who I said is one of my favorite fighters of all time, was from Davenport, Iowa. A black man from Davenport, Iowa was bizarre. But again, that was just something that was really, really talked about. And when you see the fighter came in, I thought about Davenport, Iowa. Whenever I hear if somebody says the word Davenport, Iowa, Michael Nunn comes in my name, in my head. So these are the things that are mentally foundational. And Al Bernstein talked about that on that stage, that, yeah, that wasn't really by chance. I knew that. I knew how to build up that, you know, background. So that to me was very, very, very huge. And again, this whole experience of being able to go there, learn these things, learn good and bad. One of the mistakes that we made, we were actually up there working. We did a really good job. I was happy to have my kids with me so they can see this experience. Sometimes just the networking. Networking is always an important piece of being able to grow and being able to get better and just having those conversations, being up there, just seeing people. We had some really good conversations. I struck up some good connections. But again, another mistake that we made, and I'm going to be transparent, I didn't have my book. I got halfway on the road. I was like, damn, I didn't bring a book. And sure enough, there were opportunities where I could have given my book to somebody that really, really I should have given it to them. I still have an opportunity. I got some phone numbers, so hopefully we'll still be reaching out to those people. But it was right there on the table for me. But that's something I told them. We were never going to make that mistake again because we had a few situations where we ran into people who was right there in front of me. Hello, the connection was made, but I ain't have my book to give to them. The book is so profound. As I was sitting there and hearing this people speaking, it just really, once again, was like, man, this book is just so much resonates again in this world of having like-minded people. We talk about this in the mental conditioning movement as well, about, you know, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Driving home yesterday, I was so encouraged because, listen, and one thing about boxing fans is that we may not have as many boxing fans as others, as many fans as other sports like basketball, but it's still a decent amount of people. And they travel. They spend whatever money needs to be spent, and they travel. And they're there. And all of their mindsets are the same. The people that are in the industry are the same. They think the same. To me, which is something that it's mental, and it really highlights where we're at in terms of our mindset. What is fascinating about the sport, being in that situation with the Hall of Fame. So that was how Saturday went. It went very, very well. Like I said, I was proud of myself. That was a win in my pocket to say, you know what, I went up there, I grabbed that microphone, and it felt good to say, you know what, I'm up here representing mental conditioning in sports, and I'm able to actually, get in a room like this. There's a lot of people here, and put my question out there. That's just, I don't have to wait till next year to do it the first time. So I did it already the first time, and I'm ready to do it again, and it was a great experience. And then Sunday to go to the actual Hall of Fame ceremony was also very, very special. We got up Sunday early, and they had a parade, which was, and again, this was all new. And I didn't know. I was like, I don't know, man. I'm not big on parades. That's one of my, and I did that, that's one of my residues of being a police officer. Parades and stuff like that freak me out because it's a lot of work from that standpoint of being a police officer and working a parade. It's a whole thing. You're there hours before the people get there. In most cases, some people still get the parade very, very early, but you're there before, you're there after. Every float that comes down, every car that comes down, you're involved because you're waiting for, oh my God, when is the last one? Like how many more of these things you have to go? You're there. It's stressful. You don't know what's gonna happen. So I'm a little bit freaked out by that, but it's a part of me mentally again transitioning to say, hold on a second, man, just enjoy this experience. But that's not automatic. It's going to take me a few parades to really just be comfortable and relaxed and know that I'm not working. But the parade actually was better than I thought. They had the cars coming down. They had different cars and vehicles escorting the fighters down the parade route. So it was great to see all of those fighters come through. Some of my favorite fighters. It wasn't just the Hall of Famers. I mentioned Roy Jones Jr. He was in the building. So it was great to see him. It was great to see Felix Tito Trinidad. His dad was there with him, who was also, again, he was a trainer. And, HBO and Showtime were able to highlight, Tito Trinidad's father and just really make him a part of the story, which was big, and that just really is another aspect of mindset that's powerful, that really grows the sport, made it, relatable. They came down. There was so many different people. Obviously, all of the actual inductees were in the cars as they passed by. Ray Mercer, also one of my favorites, was there. So many people was there in the cars as they passed by, and it was great to see them. But for me, as I saw each one of them as their cars passed, Sean Porter was in the building. He was doing his podcast down there, but he also was in the parade. Kelly Pavlik was in the parade. Just trying to think as many people as I can. I don't really want to miss out on people that was there. But each car that went by, it was a story to me. It represented a story. When you see Roy Jones, it represented certain things for me in his career that meant something. And each car was different. Absolute perfection. Roy Jones was just about perfection. So to see him, come down in that car, that's what I see. This guy was the best of the best. Imagine that at some point in your life, you're the best at something. That's what you see for me. But everybody's going to be different. But it's about mindset. How did he do that? How did he put himself in that position to be the best of the best? Each car that comes down, again, represented something. And then after that, we went over to the hotel, Turning Stone Resorts and Casino. I'll be going back up there. It was a very nice casino. I really enjoyed that. So we'll be going back up there to enjoy that again. So they did have the actual inductee ceremony there. And it was special, man. I mean, they had obviously all of the inductees went up and they spoke a little bit about themselves and with their journeys. And I'm going to, kind of close it out with somebody who was very, very, very special to me. And I mentioned him earlier in the show. And that was a gentleman by the name of Ross Greenberg. And Ross Greenberg is not a fighter. Ross Greenberg is one of what they call, again, a non-participant Hall of Famer. So he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, but he's an executive for HBO. And I have this argument all the time about HBO. And I want to say this, and I guess I'm going to end it here to talk about how impactful HBO boxing was to me and to my life and to mindset. It was a very impactful thing. As I sat there, on Sunday listening to him speak and just listening to everybody speak overall in boxing, I realized how impactful boxing is to my life. There's a book back there that I wrote, and I always tell people, like, where did the book come from? So a lot of it came from my dad, because these are the things that my father instilled in me through sports, through basketball, through sports. I tell people the story all the time. My mother used to always be like, can you guys stop talking about sports all the time? But we talked about sports 90% of the time, my father and I. But I didn't realize until much later in my life that, yes, he was talking to me about sports, but he also was talking to me about life. Me and my brother, about life. We learned a lot of lessons from him through sports. I think he didn't really understand how to talk about certain things with us, but he would use sports to speak to me and my brother about it. So that's why we did speak about it so much. And HBO boxing, Showtime boxing, was something that was a very special thing, that every Saturday I sat there with my brother and my dad and we watched boxing. And that was a big deal. I can remember being in high school and I remember just having this feeling, it would be a Tuesday. And I remember like, yo, I can't wait to get through this week. I cannot wait to get this. It was such a dominant part of my life that I can't wait to get to Saturday to watch. I couldn't wait to watch HBO boxing and to hear Jim Lampley, to hear George Foreman, to hear Larry Merchant, and to watch those fights. with my father and my brother. That was the greatest thing ever. And so the man that was responsible for that was Ross Greenberg. And he got up on that stage, man, and he talked about the process to it. And that was just, I was really excited to see him, honestly. I've been trying to, and that's a goal of mine. I'm going to put it out there right now. This is not just today, but I've been talking about Ross Greenberg and getting him here in the mental conditioning gym and getting him on the podcast. I've been talking about that really the past 6 months and trying to figure out how to do it. So if he's watching this, come on down, man. I really would love to have you come, but I'm not going to stop the pursuit. That's my goal, to get him to come here. But it got the fire got ignited even more, again, just to hear, exactly what I thought he would say in terms of, his vision for what he wanted boxing to look like. And also, he called out boxing, which I do this all the time. If you listen to On Second Thought Sports Show, we probably be talking about this a lot more once basketball ends, but I get into this dispute all the time about sports in general today, how it's being distributed, and mentally why it's not catching on. I'm not going to mention no names, but they were going in. They were mentioning names and how commentators are commentating today and how it's different and why I think it's not sustainable. And he talked about that foundation, and to me, it was all mindset stuff that he understood. He said very clearly, I knew that I had to get the background of the fighters. I wanted the fans to understand who this guy not just was in using his fists, but who he was as a person. Where was he from? What was his background in terms of what were the things that he worked on outside of the gym? Was he close with his dad? Was he feuding with his dad? Did he have kids? What was his charity things that he did? And they would do that. Every time they ran a show every week, when a fighter was on there, they ran a story on him. Whether they was on there, guys like HBO, like Roy Jones was on HBO, he fought maybe every 3-4 months. But every time he was on, they ran a different story. And it connected you to that fighter mentally, that you was invested. Remember, that's a big word that we use in the mental conditioning movement, about investing in your mindset. How do you do that? That's the difference between successful people and non-successful people. That's the difference between people not being able to follow the 4 principles of mental conditioning, because you're unwilling to invest in yourself. So if you're not investing in yourself, you cannot have a good self-evaluation. There's no way you can make good decisions. There's no way, it's impossible for you to have a big picture. And it ain't no way in God's green earth that you can stay the course, because you're refusing to invest in yourself. So this guy, through a genius, said, I'm not only going to make you invest in yourself, but I'm going to make you invest in the fighters. That's why that thing is such a strong foundation. That's why those people that come to the Boxing Hall of Fame, when I was really heavy into going to boxing matches, I used to tell people, one thing that's crazy about the boxing fans, it didn't matter where the fights were. And the fights can be all over. At that time, when I first started going, Atlantic City here in New Jersey was the biggest hub. So you go to Atlantic City, you see certain faces. But then if you went down to Las Vegas, you saw the same faces. And there was a few places in between. They have fights up in Tunica, Mississippi. They have in the Gulf Coast of Florida, they have fights over there. Different up in Connecticut area and the Foxwoods Resorts, they used to have fights up there. It didn't matter where you were going, you saw the same faces. So people were traveling just like me. We didn't care. But that was the investment into the sport that we all had. And I give credit to Ross Greenberg for being able to recognize that time. But it takes time. You got to build that right. That ain't an overnight thing. He took the time to say, I'm going to make people invest in these fighters. I'm going to make people invest in ways that maybe he didn't even really realize, because it became a family thing. I knew a lot of people that, they had that connection. For me, like I said, it was with my brother and my dad, but also my friends. My basement was constantly packed. If my father wasn't around, my father might be at work. I call my friends over. I had 20, 30 people in my basement easily watching fights. Some of them are still my friends to this day. When there's a big fight, they text me, you watching? Yeah, I'm watching. If I'm free, we link up. So this is a connection that he was able to see. But that's not physical, ladies and gentlemen. That's a mental connection. And as I hear those people speak up on the stage, Manny Pacquiao and all these people speaking about their passion for boxing, the young lady Mary Jo Sanders was very, very powerful, and she talked about what boxing has did for her, and she said the most profound statements to me of the night that just made me just like, wow. She's, listen, boxing is mental. It prepared me. My mindset prepared me to be able to go into that ring and do the things that I need to do. but it also prepared me mentally to get out of the ring and execute in life. I thought that was so profound that she said that. She said, mentally, I learned a lot in that ring, and it allowed me to get out of that ring and use those skills. Outside of the ring, I learned a lot there too, and it allowed me to get into the ring and to win fights because of that. That's what 12 rounds of mental conditioning, us against life, the big fight, is really all about. My wife kept looking at me and just smiling like, man, that's in your book, man. That's in your book. And it really motivated me. It really got me going. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. This is exactly where I need to be. But once again, it's about the execution. It's about me taking a chance to go there, up there. I could have said, no, let's go next year. But I said, no, let's go. Let's make it happen. Let's go up there. And I learned the lesson. Next time I'm gonna be there on Thursday. We're gonna be there for all 4 days. We'll figure it out. But we need to be there for all 4 days and to find out how this process works and make sure that we know everybody that's coming up there. And we made some pretty good connections up there that hopefully by the time we get up there, we're gonna have our book up there to be sold. So it's all part of the process. It was an excellent weekend for me. I learned a lot mentally, I learned a lot physically, and I got a chance to also, enjoy being around the sport of boxing, which I so thoroughly love. And again, one of the biggest takeaways that, I just got about it is that once again, boxing and life is such a parallel. There was a guy just sitting around, he was in one of the restaurants, and his shirt said, you know what, life is a fight, and I am a fighter. I said, man, that's what it's all about. I say that all the time. Life is a fight, and we are all fighters. Are you in shape to be able to go the 12 rounds of life when it gets to be difficult? How do you do that? I give you a hint. Go and watch a boxing match and watch what these fighters go through in order to be great. I give you a better hint. Go and watch these Hall of Famers that are in the Hall of Fame and watch what they go through the course of 12 rounds. They all had tough fights. You don't win them all. And they're certainly not all easy. But go through it and watch what they have done. That was a great weekend for me. That's my wrap up. You're going to see a whole bunch of pieces over the course of next week as I roll them out. But I again want to thank International Boxing Hall of Fame just for having such a great event. And I look forward to going back up there for many more years to come. This is the Mental Condition and Gym podcast. It's simulcasting with the On Second Thought sports show, and we're gonna be on all the social media handles. We thank you guys for joining us. I forgot to ring the bell to get us started, but I will ring the bell to take us out. Everybody have a great week. I'll see you right here again, Mental Condition and Gym podcast.